It hit her with a sudden, grounding realization that she really had come back. The shock of it all was overwhelming, settling into the fact that she was currently the villainess inside a novel. It was particularly jarring because this wasn't just any story. She had been reincarnated into the very villainess who had caught her eye during her previous life. As the reality set in, a dark, sinking question formed in her mind about what this actually meant for her future. She wondered, with a heavy sense of foreboding, if she was simply destined to die. A voice cut through her internal spiraling, asking if she had finally woken up. The maid noted that her Royal Highness looked absolutely terrible, blaming the pallor on the effects of the poison. Without giving her a moment to breathe, the maid announced she would start dressing her up immediately. The words didn't make sense to her at first, and she questioned what the woman meant. The mention of poison triggered a sharp, throbbing pain in her head. The physical sensation came with a flood of alien thoughts, and she realized with horror that these were Kaina's memories surfacing. It all clicked into place. She must have been drinking during the banquet, an event that ended with her coughing up blood. But even as the pieces fit together, she couldn't help but feel that the timing of her return was strange. The maid, noticing her silence and pale face, offered to call the clinic because she didn't look well. Kaina shut that down immediately, stating calmly that she was fine. She told the maid there was no need to worry and dismissed the concern, instructing her to return to her duties. The maid paused, confused by this reaction. Usually the princess would have thrown a massive fit by now. Subdued, the maid simply agreed. Internally, the maid wondered what could have possibly made the princess change so drastically. Meanwhile, Kaina sat there, enduring the process of being dressed up the moment she awoke in a body that had nearly died. The irony was so thick she couldn't even bring herself to laugh at it. This, she realized, was exactly what the life of a princess amounted to. It was an existence that came with beauty and nothing else. No matter how she felt or looked, she was expected to be as beautiful as ever. The praise from the people around her was suffocating and relentless. They claimed there was no one in the world who could compete against her beauty, calling her the kingdom's flower. They fawned over her smiling face, insisting she should be adorned with even more beauty, treating her exactly like a doll. To them, for a woman, beauty was power. Kaina let out a small, dismissive scoff, which caught the attention of her servant. She thought about the irony of ending up here again, questioning who could have predicted this loop. She clenched her hand into a fist, feeling the reality of her physical form. Actually, she decided, she was rather glad she hadn't returned too late in the timeline. This timing meant she still had a chance to live in prosperity. More importantly, it meant she could keep Rizef in check. However, the clock was ticking. There wasn't much time left until Rizef ascended to become the emperor. She knew that before that inevitable event happened, she had to escape his grasp completely. The only viable exit strategy was marriage, but she knew she couldn't marry someone crazy like Viscount Gillian. She needed someone else, an easy man she could manage. A voice called out her name, Kaina, pulling her from her strategy session. She focused on her primary goal, finding a way to escape Rizef's clutches. A servant interrupted, announcing that His Grace, the prince, was asking to see her. She steeled herself and gave permission to let him in. She watched him enter, the man who would become the Emperor of Eldame. She noted dryly that he had finally come. This was the novel's secondary male lead and her half-brother, Rizef Hill. He was the sinner who killed the Emperor to take the throne, a man with more sadistic tendencies than anyone else. She recalled his backstory. Receiving a cold shoulder throughout his childhood, he had twisted into a tyrant as if it were a natural procedure. Beneath it all, he was just a poor child hungry for warmth and love. He asked her how her body was feeling. She answered curtly that it was bearable. She couldn't help but notice the sharp contrast between his attractive appearance and his dark nature. Rizef flinched, visibly surprised by something. He seemed thrown off by her unusual appearance and demeanor. He admitted that he hadn't noticed it before, claiming it was a relief, but she could feel the insincerity radiating from him. He noted he could really feel a sense of half-heartedness from her. He tried to probe her, guessing that she must have been worried about him. He asked if she hadn't come to see him because she thought he was overworked. She shut him down politely, asking him not to say things like that. Rizef was internally confused. By now, the sister he knew should have asked 10 times if they had caught the culprit. He found himself unable to read her expression at all. He rationalized it to himself, deciding it must be because she was sick. He convinced himself this change was only temporary. It had to be because in his mind, Kaina was nothing more than a beautiful, totally useless doll. Rizef suddenly swore aggressively that he would find the one who tried to poison her and make them pay with his own hands. Kaina remained unmoved, telling him not to worry about her too much. She looked at him, seeing seeing the truth clearly now. She realized Rizef was just using her for the throne, nothing more and nothing less. She told him plainly to stop looking for the culprit. Rizef was stunned, demanding to know what she was saying. He reminded her intensely that she had almost died. Kaina agreed, repeating that she did almost die. She looked him dead in the eye and said it was because of him. She dropped the truth that would shatter his facade. The one who poisoned her was him, Rizef. Rizef brushed off her accusation instantly, assuming she was just scared of someone taking revenge on her. He told her not to worry. He swore he would make sure nothing like this ever happened again. Kaina simply shook her head, refusing to be placated by empty comforts. She called his name and asked him plainly who he was trying to frame. She admitted that she used to have a tendency to overly rely on him, acknowledging her past weakness. But she was sharper now, and she asked if he was trying to execute Viscount Gillian and exterminate his entire family. Rizef didn't deny it. In fact, he admitted it wasn't a bad idea since Gillian was Duke Kedri's vassal. He called it a smart choice. Kaina knew the truth. Rizef wanted to reduce Kedri's power because the Duke's influence restricted him. That political ambition was exactly why he had forced Kaina to poison herself in the first place. But she pointed out that his plan wouldn't work now. She explained that you could find any type of poison in the black market, so simply producing it wouldn't prove anything. She insisted they needed better evidence. Rizef pushed back, claiming the evidence was clear and all they needed to do now was publicize it, calling her sister to press the point. When she refused, his jealousy flared. He asked if she was doing this because of Raphael Kedri. He reminded her cruelly that while Raphael was her first love and crush, that was a long time ago. Rizef paused, sensing a shift in her. He muttered that her hesitation made her seem like something else, but he couldn't quite place it. Kaina cut him off and brought up her grandfather, Count Hamel, revealing he had intervened with the work in the black market. She warned him that there was no way the opposition would just sit there and watch their empire collapse. She dropped the heavy reality on him. They had figured out that Count Hamel was using the emperor's money in the black market. The empire was collapsing and Rizef was already deemed suspicious. Rizef tried to argue, telling her she would only get hurt if she relied on Duke Kedri. Kaina stood firm, saying that couldn't happen. She admitted almost casually that it would be tiring for her if the Count died, so she gave him a command: don't try to pull the Duke down. Instead, she told him to make the Duke his. She framed it as his chance to find a reliable partner. Rizef looked stunned, thinking, no way. Kaina elaborated that he needed a sensible adult ally. He needed someone who couldn't harm him, someone with a high status. She offered a name that stopped him cold. How did Olivia Grace sound? Rizef asked if she was referring to the very lady Duke Kedri had taken a liking to. He demanded to know what she was thinking. Kaina confirmed it, describing Olivia as the one who was subjected to go to the Empire. She noted that Olivia even disliked the fact that she was getting help from the Duke. Internally, Kaina knew the tragic script. Olivia was the novel's female lead, and the woman Rizef falls in love with. She knew Rizef would want Olivia to live again, but she also remembered that in the original story, he tries to kill Olivia when she chooses Raphael at the end. Rizef looked at her with deep concern, asking if she was really sure that was okay. He scolded her, saying she couldn't always be doing things that weren't beneficial to herself. He stared at her, genuinely confused, asking if she was the same Kaina he knew. He called her sister again, asking what on earth she was thinking. She grabbed his hand, desperation in his voice. She shouted his name. She told him intensely that all she had was him, Rizef. She squeezed his hand, he groaned, the emotional weight crushing him. She reminded him he was the only family she had. Kaina realized with a pang of memory that this was exactly what she used to always tell Rizef. He told her to please stop acting this way. Rizef pulled back, thinking she was definitely crazy and wondering if the poison was that strong. He asked again why she was doing this. Kaina looked him dead in the eye and asked if he trusted her. She asked if he really thought of her as his sister. Then she posed the fatal question: if she became useless, what would he do then? She answered for him, saying there was a very obvious answer to that. Sending her off to a useful family would be the easiest and safest way to get rid of her. That is, as long as she didn't get killed by a crazy husband. She thought of her past life, where she was sold to Gillian and killed after days of abuse. She stepped toward him. She told him she was fully aware of her position, and she was equally aware of how much he needed her. Rizef finally caved, asking her what she wanted. She imagined a life where she could do anything she wanted. She said the word clearly: freedom. Rizef laughed in disbelief. He asked if she was going to give up her high position just for freedom. She clarified her terms: just let her marry somebody she loved. That was the freedom she asked for. Rizef immediately stiffened, asking if she was talking about Raffaello. She said calmly it wasn't him. She added that it didn't matter, then asked what she would get in return. Suddenly her body betrayed her. She stumbled, her condition rapidly deteriorating. She shook, fighting to stay conscious, telling herself she couldn't faint here, not yet. She made her offer. She would make him the emperor. She told him she knew he could gain the throne without her support, especially with the Evans family serving as his strategist. Her vision blurred and she gasped for air, but she warned him that if he used them he would have to share his power. Rizef asked if she was saying she would be his strategist instead. She told him he shouldn't trust her right away. She started to say that what she really wanted for him was something she needed time to think about. She gasped again, realizing her whole body was on fire. She knew if she left it be. Rizef shouted, "Hey." As she began to fall, Rizef screamed for the servants to call the clinic now. As her consciousness faded, she reached up and touched his face visual panel. In a moment of calculated softness, or perhaps delirium, she whispered that he was a kind person. Rizef sat alone, the encounter with his sister leaving him unsettled, and he immediately began issuing cold, strategic commands. He ordered a Ray investigation into the attempted poisoning of Kaina, specifically targeting ruined nobles who were in line for the guillotine, those desperate enough for money with families to support. He took a breath, trying to steady himself, and then added another layer of control. He ordered more guards to be placed around the princess, demanding that all her activities be reported directly to him. His subordinate acknowledged the orders, but there was one more thread he needed to pull. He instructed them to find out more about Olivia Grace, the name Kaina had dropped so deliberately. As the subordinate left, he couldn't help but notice the change in his master. It was the first time he had ever seen Rizef look so out of it. He bowed and took his leave, sensing the shift in the air. Left alone with his thoughts, Rizef wrestled with doubt. He had always believed he had Kaina completely in his grasp. He questioned whether he really wanted to play this game with her. He dismissed the idea that she could be this smart on her own, wondering if someone had given her advice. His mind jumped to Baron Hamel, but he quickly rejected it, realizing the man had no reason to intervene. He considered the playing field. The current successors to the throne were himself and Kaina, but there was a wild card, the Grand Duke Jester Heinrich. Rizef recalled the Heinrich family history. They were of royal lineage, but because it wasn't a direct line recognized by the temple, they were technically ineligible for succession. Coupled with a hereditary disease that plagued their generations, no one had paid them much attention. But then, everything changed. A nobleman appeared, backed by a force called the Nobles Faction, Archduke Jester Heinrich. He had upended the board completely. Jester had taken the emperor's government by storm, holding Catherine Lindbergh hostage. He used that leverage to threaten the emperor into recognizing his family as direct imperial lineage, clearing his path to inherit the throne. Even though Rizef had an army, the political landscape had shifted dangerously. Rizef thought of Jester's eyes that didn't just seek hedonistic pleasure, but held a bright, chilling air. He had planned to use Kaina while keeping Jester in check, but now his pawn was acting on her own. He remembered Kaina's gaze, the way those blue eyes looked straight into his, giving him chills. He murmured to himself, wondering what he should do with Kaina now. The scene shifted to the gossiping courtiers, their whispers filling the air. A servant approached Kaina with news. He informed her Grace that the man who poisoned her had been arrested. He asked if she wanted to go out, as today was his execution day. Kaina declined quietly, saying it was fine. She noted that it had been 15 days and she still needed to recover, but internally she was processing the speed of it all. It had happened just as she thought. She realized she had stayed quiet for a long time to avoid Rizef's vigilance. The fact that the culprit was caught so fast suggested he was an old enough scapegoat. But the political wheels were turning. People were arguing that Rizef should be quickly installed as emperor, while others shouted that no one had the right to succeed yet, and hasty decisions shouldn't be made. Rizef's aggressive performance had jeopardized Duke Heinrich's position. The whispers continued, with people saying they had to stop Rizef from gaining support somehow. In the midst of this chaos, an article about Kaina was released to shift the narrative. She knew they needed to direct attention elsewhere. The public image was being crafted carefully. The servant mentioned that the nobles were already looking forward to her coming-of-age ceremony. Kaina expressed doubt, saying she wasn't sure. The servant suggested she might expect a fiancé soon and casually wondered if Duke Kedri would be a good match. Kaina was acutely aware of the many servants watching her. She knew her answer would probably reach Rizef's ears. She replied carefully, saying that since the king's father father didn't want it, it would likely be difficult. She added another layer, saying it was definitely for the emperor's sake. She explained that if Duke Kedri married the princess, problems could arise in the power structure. The servant hesitated, noting it was an open secret that the emperor and Duke of Kedri had a bad relationship, but she was surprised to hear Her Majesty say it so openly. Kaina continued, acknowledging that no one knew exactly why the relationship had soured. She reflected on the past, how in that tense situation she had fallen in love with Raphael, giving the emperor a big headache. She admitted that even so, the emperor thought it was a good thing, so he would have listened. But she corrected herself, it wasn't for her sake. He was most likely just trying to humiliate Kedri. She confessed her shame at not understanding his intentions earlier and for pushing him so far. She stated firmly that she had been acting inappropriately as a princess and would have to deal with the consequences of her actions. Then, she ordered the dress room to be opened. The scene shifted to the preparations for Kaina's coming-of-age banquet. The preparations had been underway for a long time. A maid gushed that she looked just like a doll. Another maid confirmed that all the necessary dresses were finished. She noted that although they didn't embroider roses, the motif was still used properly. The flattery poured in, with maids squealing that there wouldn't be anyone more beautiful than her at the banquet. Kaina observed them coolly. She recognized the tactful and natural-sounding compliments, realizing they were exactly the kind of praise the old Kaina would have loved. She noted with detachment that she wasn't reacting to them at all. One maid, Vera, noticed the change. She thought to herself that after drinking the poison, the princess had totally changed. She felt she was the only one who noticed it. She observed that while it was good everyone was being nice, something was different. Kaina caught Vera's gaze. She identified the maid as Vera, noting that she was quite sharp and intuitive. Vera looked around, thinking that this situation was definitely not an easy thing. She sensed the complexity of the moment. Kaina watched her, realizing Vera was ambitious too. She decided that of all these maids, Vera was the only one she could use. She knew that all the maids in the kingdom were under Rezef's authority. Usually the maids were eager to stand out in front of the emperor, and they would always turn their backs on Kaina to look good. Kaina decided she would give Vera a chance, telling her mentally to take her time. Kaina smiled a small, calculated smile. For the sake of a life uninterrupted by anyone, she would see if they were a good match. She knew she had to expand her side, whether it be people, resources, or power. She reflected on her past life, living in a cage with nothing. Just living as a puppet, she had never realized whose power she truly wielded. She clenched her fist, the fabric of her dress crunching under her grip. She admitted she was once under the illusion that it was all hers. But by living under that delusion, she had learned a lot of things. She vowed she didn't plan on repeating the same mistakes twice. She would live as herself. With renewed resolve, she gave the order, "Get ready. I need to have an audience with the emperor." The emperor looked at her, genuinely surprised, noting how unexpected it was for her to seek him out first. Kaina didn't waste a moment. She immediately addressed the elephant in the room, acknowledging the disgraceful incidents that had happened around her recently. She smoothed over the poisoning incident with practiced ease, assuring him that Rezef would take care of it and asking him not to worry. She played the role of the mature sister perfectly. The emperor watched her, seeing the image of a young daughter trying to soothe a father exasperated by her antics, but internally his mind was sharp. He knew it was clear that Rezef was the one who had poisoned her. He looked at her closely, thinking, "Isn't it?" Kaina continued, apologizing softly for causing him to worry. Inside, her thoughts were cold and strategic. She couldn't let the emperor suspect Rezef of anything. She knew it was natural for the emperor and Rezef to stray further apart, and she intended to widen that gap on her own terms. The emperor, perhaps testing her or perhaps feeling a twinge of paternal obligation, offered to lend a hand if she wished to catch the real culprit. Kaina dismissed the offer gently. She claimed it wasn't an important incident anyway, and that it was better to just handle it quietly like this. She humbled herself, admitting she had been a terrible daughter and wanted to start playing her part now, even if it was a bit late. She smiled, a mask of perfect grace. She implored him to look over it, reminding him that Rezef was still just a child. The emperor was stunned. He thought to himself that she was acting this way despite knowing it was Rezef who hurt her. He wondered if the rumors of her acting differently were actually real. He found it impressive. He mused that, as they say, a king's offspring is born with the qualities of a king. Since her actions were so praiseworthy, he decided he must give her a reward. He considered his options. He noted that there wasn't much time left before her coming-of-age ceremony, so he should start looking into candidates for her marriage. He flinched slightly as a name crossed his mind. mind, Raffaello. He thought of him out of habit but quickly dismissed it, knowing he wasn't the one for her. He simply needed the duchy's powers. He asked her directly if there was anyone she had in mind. He pressed her, noting that she had chased after Raffaello for so long. Was she really alright with marrying someone else? Kaina replied with a calm that bordered on icy. She stated that as a princess, she could not be swayed by such personal feelings. The emperor thought she had become so confident and wise. She had surprised him a lot today. Kaina bowed her head submissively, saying she would simply follow his orders. The emperor decided he couldn't decide on her spouse so easily and suggested they take things slow. Kaina agreed, excusing herself with a polite, "Yes, your majesty." As the door clicked shut behind her, the emperor was left alone with his thoughts. He concluded she must have matured. She had changed. The pathetic Kaina from before was gone. Now she was mature enough to defend the little brother who tried to kill her. But what struck him most was that she brought up marriage first. He wondered with a lingering sense of disbelief if Kaina truly no longer loved Raffaello. Outside the chambers, a man stood waiting. A servant asked if he was here to see his majesty. Kaina emerged and told him he could rise. She greeted him coolly. "It's been a while, Sir Kedri." Raffaello paused, his internal monologue revealing his shock. She was calling him Sir Kedri instead of the clingy nickname Raffi she used to use. He stood there, Raffaello Kedri. He possessed the signature black hair and red eyes that symbolized the Kedri duchy. His strong attitude, formed from roaming battlefields since a young age, was known to shake the hearts of noble ladies, and as the narration noted, that included Kaina's heart as well. He bowed formally, greeting Her Highness the Princess. Kaina looked at him, admitting to herself that anyone would be attracted to him, just like her past self was. Raffaello explained his presence. He had been told to come back later because the emperor was in the middle of a nap when he tried to visit earlier. Suddenly, the hallway filled with the chatter of servants and nobles. They pointed out that the princess had come out of her room. They gossiped loudly, assuming she was definitely there to mock the duke again. They speculated that the emperor didn't see him on purpose, but now that she had come out, drama was inevitable. Kaina cut through the noise instantly. She scolded them, reminding them they were in front of His Majesty's chambers and ordering them not to raise their voices. She turned back to Raffaello with a polite dismissal. Since she couldn't disturb His Majesty while he rested, she said she would return next time. She began to stride away, but then she stopped and dropped the hook. She said she knew why he was here to see His Majesty. Raffaello looked at her, surprised. He asked if she really knew why he wished to see the emperor. He noticed her eyes, they seemed all-knowing. She slid closer, her voice lowering. She told him she might be of help to him. She suggested brewing him a cup of tea since it had been so long since they last met. Raffaello realized instantly what she was implying. She knew he was trying to avoid the pressure of marriage from his house. She sweetened the deal, mentioning that a pleasant flavor of tea had just been delivered as well. Raffaello was skeptical. He wondered how Kaina could possibly help with that. But he couldn't deny the shift. She was not the same princess who used to act as a nuisance just to attract his attention. This felt different. This felt like the attitude of a negotiator or perhaps a schemer. He took a step forward, intrigued. He decided it would be worth it to listen at least. He thanked her for the invitation. The gossipers went wild again. They whispered that Duke Raffaello was really going to visit the princess's palace. They swooned over how handsome he was and noted it had been so long since he met up with the princess. Her maids went into panic mode. They urged the others to hurry and bring the most luxurious dress to impress him. Kaina stopped them cold. "Stop," she commanded. She told them there was no need to dress up and ordered them to bring out some comfortable clothes instead. Raffaello waited in the drawing room. He thought about how the princess would normally dress extravagantly when meeting him, likely expecting a grand entrance. But when the door opened, he was stunned. She walked out in such basic attire. She apologized for making him wait so long, addressing him again as Sir Kedri. Raffaello observed her closely. She wasn't dressed extravagantly like usual, and she wasn't acting coquettish either. However, something else struck him. He clenched his hand. He told her it was quite all right. But his mind was racing with a question. Had Kaina ever felt so dignified and beautiful? He shook the thought away, telling himself it had nothing to do with him anyway. Kaina sat down across from him, composed and ready. She got straight to the point. "Well then, shall we begin talking about your marriage?" Raffaello's eyes narrowed, his guard instantly up. He asked her sharply how she knew that there were talks of marriage happening regarding him. Kaina didn't flinch, answering smoothly that it wasn't difficult to find out, considering he was the heir to the military family with the most power after the imperial family. She observed him, noting the tension in his posture. She remarked that it seemed seemed like he didn't wish to get married for some reason. Internally, however, she was operating on a much deeper level of knowledge. She couldn't let him know that she knew about his mysophobia. In the original novel, that was a secret only he and his most trusted aide knew. She spun a plausible cover story for her insight. She claimed she was just assuming, but she guessed that he wanted to be acknowledged as the next duke by the vassals by proving his skills. She pointed out that he was receiving military authority from His Majesty to do just that, wasn't he? The narrative shifted inward, revealing the tragic context of Raffaello's life. Currently, his parents were in the middle of a messy divorce process. This was because his father, a son-in-law of the Kedri family, had committed acts of infidelity a long time ago. His mother had waited for Raffaello to come of age before kicking her husband out, but she was faced with a critical issue. Rumors had begun to spread about Raffaello, speculating on a sexuality that prevented him from producing an heir. The whispers were damaging. The vassals did not agree to appoint him as the duke. It wasn't entirely surprising they viewed him strangely. Despite being 23, he had never so much as held hands with a woman, but the truth was far more painful. He suffered from mysophobia so severe it had practically become a mental illness. He couldn't feel affection or attachment towards anyone and felt physically disgusted when coming into contact with others. It was truly a disease of the heart. His mother, who had no way of knowing this deep-seated trauma, was desperate to get her son to marry. Back in the drawing room, Kaina looked at him with feigned innocence, saying she was simply amazed at how she was able to find out so much, confirming that he had planned on proving his abilities to bypass the marriage requirement. Raffaello admitted she was right. He mentioned that although he wasn't able to see His Majesty earlier, he still needed to resolve this. Kaina cut in, telling him there was no need. She promised she could take care of it for him. Before he could question her methods, she turned to a servant. She asked if they had brought everything she asked for. Raffaello watched, puzzled, wondering how Her Highness would take care of his marriage. Kaina gave a specific order to the servant: brew a strong cup of tea and mix in some milk and sugar for Sir Kedri. Raffaello looked at her with a silent question mark floating over his head. She explained it was a special tea she drank often. She told him that when she needed to skip meals due to a busy schedule, it was good for filling up her stomach as well. She assured him it shouldn't taste bad and invited him to try it. Raffaello hesitated, hearing the clatter of the cup. He thought that since the princess often prepared gifts as she pleased, this must be something similar. He stared at the liquid. Tea with milk. He had never heard of such a thing. He just hoped it would be a relief if he didn't spit it out. He took a sip. Kaina smiled, asking him how it was. Raffaello's eyes widened in genuine surprise. She told him she brewed it to match her preference, so she was glad it suited his tastes as well. Raffaello admitted quietly that it was delicious. In fact, it was so good that he asked if he could try it again if she wouldn't mind. Kaina looked happy to hear that. She promised to give him the recipe before he left so he could take it with him. Raffaello thanked her, feeling a strange, unfamiliar emotion rising in his chest. He asked himself if he had ever felt as if he liked something so much. Kaina slid the conversation forward. Now that they had filled up Sir Kedri's stomach, which was bound to be starving from all his work, she chuckled softly. She asked, "Shall I tell you about your marriage candidates now?" The scene shifted to later, capturing Raffaello in a different setting. A voice croaked out that he was late. It was his mother, waiting for her son. Raffaello halted, asking her what she was doing at the capital. He pointed out she should be in the western part of the duchy. His mother sighed, calling him cold for not even offering her a cup of tea. She ordered the servants to bring out some simple snacks and tea. Raffaello interrupted. "Ah, wait," he said. He ordered one of the cups to be a strong tea with milk and sugar. His mother looked at him, surprised. She didn't know he had such tastes. The servant bowed, obeying the lord. Raffaello touched his face, thinking to himself that he probably started liking it today. His mother looked around with disapproval, complaining that the house was such a mess because there was no lady to take care of it. Raffaello asked if this was why she was here. She admitted yes, she couldn't help it when she saw how he kept pushing things off. She presented her list. "These are your marriage candidates." As she spoke, Kaina's voice from their earlier meeting seemed to overlay the moment, dissecting each option with brutal precision. First was Lady Dolors of House Avon. While skilled at piano and embroidery, Kaina had pointed out she faints at the sight of blood, a terrible fit for a military family. More importantly, her countdom was in danger of bankruptcy due to immense debt, and Lord Heinrich would soon take over. Next was Lady Rita of House Brucken. She was trained as a knight, which seemed like a good fit, but Kaina had warned she lacked the knowledge and wisdom to lead a family like his. The crucial flaw was a hereditary hereditary disease, she suffered from madness. They were keeping it quiet now, but soon it would be known to the social circles. Lastly, there was Lady Olivia of House Grace. Kaina had noted he was probably familiar with her since his family sponsored them. She described Olivia as very clever and considerate. Back in the tea room, Raffaello had looked at Kaina, realizing the pattern. He asked if she was saying Olivia was the only one she recommended out of all the candidates. Kaina confirmed it instantly. "That's right," she said. She praised Olivia as beautiful, strong, and flawless, declaring that the two of them would make a great pair. Raffaello sat there, processing her recommendation. He realized exactly what this meant. Her relationship with Olivia would be beneficial for the princess herself. Kaina added one final, pointed request. She asked him not to forget the fact that she was the one who arranged for the two of them to meet. Raffaello was left stunned, thinking, what in the world does that mean?